The national debt, which is now beyond $36 trillion, T as in Tyrannosaurus, is costing Americans $1.8 billion in interest payments every single day. I kid you not. Here's what Walter Williams said about the budget. Number 3.
Whether Americans realize it or not, the last decade of congressional spending is unsustainable. Spending must be reined in, but then you have to ask the question, what should be cut? Now, the Republicans hold the majority in the House of Representatives, and I doubt whether they're going to be very, very bold because they fear being booted out of office and are understandably timid. And actually, I don't hold them totally responsible because, this was brought up to me, some years ago during the Reagan administration. I was having lunch with Jesse Helms, senator from North Carolina, and he knows that I was very critical of farm subsidies. He says, Walter, I agree with you 100%. I think that we should cut farm subsidies. But he said to me, if I do what you say, the people in North Carolina, they're going to run me out of town. And they're going to put somebody in worse than I am. This is the first time I asked myself the question, is it reasonable for us to expect a politician to commit what he considers to be political suicide? But let's look at the House majority and ask the question, what are they going to cut? Well, from what I see, their rule for what to cut appears to be, look around and see who are the politically weak recipients. Now, cutting the politically weak recipients, that's just peanuts. Most spending done by the federal government is the so-called non-discretionary spending. That takes up almost 60% of the federal budget, which is about $3.8 trillion this year. So if you're not talking about cutting or doing something about the non-discretionary part of the budget, and the non-discretionary part of the budget is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, prescription drugs. That's the bulk of the non-discretionary part of the budget. And people saying, let's deal with the budget by cutting some defense. And I admit that defense, there's a lot of wasteful spending. But think about this. The defense budget is $685 billion. The federal deficit is $1.8 trillion. We could eliminate all defense spending, tell all the soldiers to go home, no more flying planes, and that would reduce the deficit by a little bit over a third. So we have to ask the question, where's the huge federal spending? Some congressmen, I think it's like almost 200 members of the House and roughly 50 senators, have co-sponsored a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. Well, I've always argued that a balanced budget amendment is no protection against the growth of government and the loss of our liberties. Let me give you an example just to highlight what I'm saying. The GDP, our gross domestic product, is about $15 trillion. That's $15 trillion is what the American people are going to produce this year. Now, I would like for somebody out there to tell me that they would be happy if federal spending was $15 trillion and federal revenue was $15 trillion. We'd have a balanced budget, but we'd be slaves. So having a balanced budget is no protection to our liberty. Estimated federal revenue for 2011 is $2.2 trillion. Federal spending is $3.8 trillion, leaving us a $1.6 trillion deficit. Now, the budget can be easily balanced simply by Congress taking more of our earnings and making us greater congressional serfs. True protection requires that there be an amendment to the Constitution limiting congressional spending to a certain percentage of the GDP. Now, back in 1978, I had the honor of being a member of a very, very prestigious group formed by the National Tax Limitation Committee. Some of the members in the group was Milton Friedman, Bill Niskanen, James Buchanan, Judge Bork. And what we pushed for was a spending limitation amendment to the United States Constitution. We wrote one up, and it was shepherded through the Senate. And, in fact, in 1982, it passed the Senate.